Does that mean that everyone who is fearful or manipulative or controlling has an attachment problem, attachment
And
issue?
disorder is a strong word.
Okay.
And I would say that most of us have places where we could go back, and in this book here, The Life Model, where we could go back and look at maturity indicators and see places where we have missed development. You know, there's just no perfect family.
Mm-hmm.
There are no perfect parents, and none of us can know enough to ever be a perfect parent. And so am I answering your question
Yes,
again?
yes.
So attachment challenges and unmet needs, we all actually do have some of those. When we say it is a disorder, then that would look like the ability to do things that would be behaviors acting out, harming others, and not having a desire to protect others at the time of those abuses to other people. We learn with attachment, you learn how to protect others from self and self from others. So our friends that are sitting in jail who never learned that have their brains, what we have to understand about attachment is what is reactionary and what is reasoning. I'm putting so much in here. We'll get back to that as well.
Yes.
Am I going too far here?
No.
Okay.
You aren't. Okay, let's go to the next one then.
Yeah. Self-centeredness controls the lifestyle because, again, you're operating in the back of the brain, fear, manipulation, sex, food, okay? Addictions are formed. Now, truly, if you were to go into a prison and talk to prisoners there, if you understand attachment, your heart could not do anything but be in love with reaching the hearts that never, ever downloaded. Your existence is delightful, not your performance. I'm not talking about your performance. Your existence is worth my time. That is just so enormous. And their reason for addictions is that the lack of that knowledge is so painful. And they don't have words for that. They're acting it out. It is so painful that their only means that they are aware of is to deaden that pain through addiction. And if they're not capable of either gaining attachment and finding new ways to function in life, then they either are in reaction mode, aggression, violence. They're either in jail or they say, I can't take it, and they commit suicide.
You said that if they are not capable of gaining attachment, how do people in prison, how do people who are suffering from an attachment disorder, how do they gain attachment?
Well, there are two ways, and God's way that He planned, and I believe in the Creator. God's way that He planned is that we would be birthed to people who would be reciprocal and share belonging and share identity. And so I know of cases where when there weren't people to give them that. So here's the thing, it is dependent on people giving us that or truly receiving it from God. But I also know people who have received this from God and had a difficulty functioning out here, because functioning with God all by yourself on an island, if all your needs were met, fine. But when you've got to function out here where you fear people, now what do? Now you are dependent, and we are interdependent, on others who can share attachment with us. And we have to find that.
I know of a young man, in fact, I went to his funeral last year, and he was a foster child and then was adopted by a family, but he had been in and out of so many foster homes. He was deeply loved by this family. However, he didn't live long enough to, I believe, let that love just surround him and absorb him. And people who were at the funeral said, I just wish that he would have lived longer. And I'm aware of the frontal cortex that changes were probably happening in his brain to attach to this family and attach to his desire to live.
Yes.
But probably time was not. What is your comment about that?
There are so many dynamics, and very wonderful people may lack the speed it might take for someone. So he committed suicide?
Yes.
Yes. They just may not have had enough opportunities to find out how he would receive love. An infant's first task, and we'll look at that with the neurosequential brain model, neurologically, emotionally, mentally, the infant's first task is to receive. So what we want to do is create opportunities where they can literally receive, where their brain can download neural circuit patterns from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. And they block us out when there's lots of fear. And so if they block us out over time and we're running out of time, really that is not in our hands at that point.
And they
Am I
block us
answering
out
that
and
again?
test us, too.
Yes, absolutely. That's right. And testing is a profound thing because testing says the fear in the back of my brain is causing so much reaction, and I need to see how you're going to handle the fear in the back of my brain because at the moment that's the only identity that I have. Wow. Okay, disorders become means for survival, so I think we did kind of cover that.
Yes, we did.
And love relationship is the answer. How much time do we have at this point? Because we can do so much here.
We have about 6 minutes.
About 6
Yes.
minutes, okay. When we're thinking about love and voice tone, eye contact, some of these things are so repetitive, but I want to keep repeating them because they're almost so simple, but they're so equipping. Looking at, let's go ahead and read this. The brain will work neurologically, chemically, emotionally, to develop throughout the lifetime, searching or avoiding love relationship. So let's say that you are in a family that truly loves you and they do not have the equipment or the capacity because of how they grew up to show you that love. Even in a home where they are loved, but they were not really receiving that love from one another. Okay? Literally, they grow up in what is called a fear bond. We've touched on that. We'll touch on it more again. But in that fear bond, they will actually avoid intimacy because it's so scary to hope to really be accepted for who I really am and not the role I'm playing in this family who doesn't have capacity to actually exchange more intimacy. Is that answering?
Yes. Yes.
These are good people. You know, when we think of abuse, we think drugs, alcohol, crime, violence. And, you know, when we're talking trauma, we're talking a lot of missing components where good people don't know how to reach one another and be their true heart with one another.
And we are going to talk more about trauma on the next program because that's a whole topic in itself.
Yes, we need to look probably at, we'll go through this and then let's try and flip right through to that picture of the brain.
All right.
People and children live in hope for love. We were created to live in joy, in a state of joy. Neurologists tell us that. The Bible tells us that. People and children live in hope for love or in emotional avoidance, coldness, to avoid the fear of the pain of feeling unlovable. That is the worst state, to feel unlovable. That is the worst state to be in.
My goodness. Now, I'm going to...
There we go. The magnificent brain made for love. And I want to say, you know, in the secular world and the biblical world, we acknowledge we are a 3-part person. Now, if we have a 3.5-pound brain, we have a body, soul, spirit. That is quite complex. So we need to be lifelong learners about how we love people, bring them to joy, you know, and how we are maturing in our brains. Now, we see something called the amygdala right there. And in an infant, the amygdala, when they are hungry, when they have any need, that amygdala causes them to cry out. So that little infant cries out, and let's say mom comes and picks up the infant's looking for that eye contact. Okay, 6 cycles per second capable of matching her amygdala, which is going in neural circuit patterns, to her prefrontal cortex. He's trying to match those patterns. And so if he's able to match those patterns in her brain and receive attachment with her, it's literally downloading to his brain, then a message, that mapping will take that message of love and identity and value to his prefrontal cortex. If that does not happen, the hippocampus of the brain will kick in to soothe the child and spray cortisol on the brain. So if the infant's needs are not being met, over time, too much cortisol damages the brain. And it can be reversed.
Yes, I was just going to ask.
Yes.
It can be reversed.
Yes.
In the last minute we have, what would you tell our viewers from what they've learned today? How could you summarize what they can do to help a person with an attachment disorder?
Okay. They can work on themselves and say, where is it that I have a difficulty being calm and joy and restful about my own identity? How can I find others in life that model joyful identity that I can download from and feel reciprocal and trusting with? And then they can begin to model that to their children.
All right. Sounds somewhat simple. Next week, we're going to go into, in our next program, it more advanced. And so thank you very much for this program, and thank you for what you're going to be teaching us next time. And thank you for joining us, because next time we're going to look into trauma in a little more depth. We're going to give you some skills, and we're going to discover what love languages, we have 5 of them, and also learning styles, we have 3 or 4 or 5, depending on which expert's books you read, and combine all of them and intervene in trauma. So stay tuned next week for the Verbal Edge, and until then, thank you very much for joining us. Good evening.